Alright, pissing a day 90, I think. 89 or 90, either one. Arm wrestling day, and today the bench that I normally use to do side pressure on, it's broken, so I had to kind of makeshift this. And last session I was speculating whether or not I needed to do side pressure 5 sets of 5 1 week, and then do like cool off week the next, and then kind of sort of concurrently train it, like have a volume day or a low intensity day where I get kind of blood into the muscle or into the tendons and ligaments of the elbow and basically just heal it up, or if I'm able to do 5 sets of 5 every single session with side pressure. So anyway, today it was evident that I can continue just doing 5 sets of 5 on side pressure, because I went up another kilo, so went from 41 kilos to 42 and a half. And yeah, it was, it was tough, and it didn't feel as light as last week. Last week was weird. I randomly just felt way stronger. It might partially be creatine, increased calories, etc. But yeah, it's been hurting less and less in my elbow. That might be from fish oil. That might be from increased calories. That might be from creatine. It could be a lot of different things. But normally I get this like jarring pain, releasing pain in my elbows, like ligaments and tendons relaxed. They would hurt immensely. And that's a pretty common thing to happen with side pressure training. Is in the moment it's not that bad, but then when you release your arm like that, it's like fuck, like just you get this crazy radiating pain in your fucking elbow. But that's becoming less and less. And I don't know if that's conditioning or bulking or whatever the fuck is going on. But anyway, yeah. So next week I'll see if I can go up to 45 and do 5 sets of 5 with that, or like 43 and a half or whatever, because try not to jump these weights too quickly, since it is a pretty like weeks isolation movement. But yeah, side pressure so far so good. I'm still going up. Hopefully by the end of the year I'll have a 60 kilo 1 rep max, maybe even more. I think Todd Hutchins has 70. If I could get to there, I'd be fucking stoked. Not that that would mean anything, but it'd be cool to be able to say I have the same side pressure lifting capacity of the GOAT of side pressure. And yeah, as I say all the time, I need to get my side pressure up because I don't have those big hands. And it's the coolest way to fucking arm wrestle, dude. Like, if you can just crush a dude with the most fundamental, newbie way of doing it, and like they train all their hand, they do all the pussy stuff, the pronation, the cup, which obviously I do too. But they're like, yeah, I'm a hand guy, I'm a top roller. And then you just come in there and just fucking shoulder them. You just brute force elbow pressure through there. It's kind of an ultimate mog. And then I also tried some kind of flop wrist pressing here at the end, just to feel what that feels like, because I've never really done that. And that kind of felt pretty stable. I know a lot of novices or beginners, such as myself, oftentimes it's hard for them to really connect that, even if they're a strong bench presser or anything. Like when Larry Wheels first started training, he would try to flop wrist press people as a fucking, like 280 kilo bench presser, like just elite of elite pressing power. And it just, even though he had all that tricep and pec and front delt strength, it just didn't translate as well. The elbow and ligaments weren't, elbow ligaments and tendons just weren't solid enough to really translate that strength. Nowadays, he seems to be able to do it, actually, now that he's conditioned his elbow more. But, yeah, so I wanted to see if my elbow was conditioned enough to translate decently strong shoulder, tricep, and pec strength through the flop wrist press, which happened to be possible for me. And that's another possible option in my arsenal, is the flop wrist press. As a guy with small hands and unlikely to have the ability to really top roll or hook anybody, side pressure and training like Todd Hutchins, but also really emphasizing my flop wrist press. So it could be also a thing where I try to get really good at pressing, which I've historically been pretty good at pressing. I've been a pretty heavy bench presser before, until recently. So it might be a thing where I'm more of a gym guy versus a table time guy. Like Todd Hutchins is very much in the gym, getting his side pressure strong. Obviously he does table time, but he's much more of a west side barbell, essentially what would be a power lifter as an arm wrestler. And Jerry Cataret, the goat of flop wrist pressing, or at least so far is the goat of it. Same thing. He's into table time, no doubt, but he's big into really making sure his bench press is really strong. So anyway, we'll see if that manifests itself in the future. And then today, again, this fucking bench was broken, so I couldn't really do the conventional movements, or one of the movements that I do normally. So I was just kind of fucking around trying to figure out how I could do it without that bench. I'm going to have to buy a new bench or figure out, maybe build a arm wrestling table. I really should build one anyway, just in case I ever find someone who's willing to arm wrestle me where I live. And then also I can train on it, which makes more sense. It's just, it's much more sport specific. So maybe I'll build one. But the problem with that is it still doesn't allow me to then kind of vice grip my wrist into the bench, because I'm trying to isolate my wrist with this specific movement here, or both movements that I do with my wrist, in order to standardize it and make sure I'm not using any biceps or lat drive or anything, which can give you inconsistent reps, which will give you inconsistent results. I want to keep my wrist kind of planted in place so that my arm and shoulders and back are out of the equation. So an arm wrestling bench wouldn't really necessarily fix that, but I should still build one regardless. And that'd be a fun little project since I like building. But yeah, I couldn't find anything that really worked to emulate the movement that I was trying to do. So I just kind of just kept going, taking sets to failure. I just kind of did like an absolute sort of demolishing workout here for my cupping. Eventually I just decided I just do kind of a slightly strict, slightly cheated wrist curl in and just demolish it and just do drop sets and shit. And by now my forearms are really pumped anyway, but yeah, I'll have to figure out how to fix that next time. Maybe it'll be time for a new exercise selection since I don't have two benches now. There was something I want to talk about and I forgot what it was now. I just remembered. So as far as arm wrestling training goes, to my knowledge, there's no one that does high intensity approach. I don't really think there is anyone that just does one set to failure once a week and that's all they do. Except for maybe John Brzenk, who doesn't even do weights. What he does is table time once a week, and of which he's probably doing a bunch of shit to failure because, arm wrestling people is a basically max out effort, or a bunch of different max out efforts. So, and he's the greatest of all time. So maybe there's something to that. But for the most part, people seem to follow much more of a high volume approach, because it's very much that if you're a professional arm wrestler, you don't need to train your back, your legs, your chest as much. I mean, some of them do, obviously, but a lot of them don't, like Devin Larac, etc. They just specialize. And when you're that specialized, you have much more recovery to essentially just make sure that you can train way more frequently. When you're only training your forearms, the rest of your body doesn't have any recovery requirements unless you can train those body parts much more frequently. And they're probably also not taking sets to absolute failure. So a lot of people who do arm wrestling, they do a shit ton of volume and frequency. Thus, apart from maybe John Brzenk and maybe a few other guys that only do table time once a week, I don't know who they would be. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only people. Maybe there's another guy out there who's big into Dorian Yates and Mike Menser and bodybuilding and stuff who does it too. But to my knowledge, at least, I'm probably the only guy that does it strictly once a week. In the sense that I do pronation training every day with my right forearm just to really hammer in my pronation. But other than that, I basically just do arm wrestling specific training once a week. And I'd be curious to see how decent I could get at arm wrestling with this modality. Granted, I don't have any genetic, attributes to speak of that would allow me to be professional or anything. But it'd be interesting to see how much stronger I can become than when I first originally started off high intensity training. Because again, it seems that everyone does high frequency, high volume, and that's fine, and that probably makes the most sense because you have a bunch of recovery that you can work with when that's all you do. But as is high intensity superior to volume in bodybuilding in the sense that it saves you time and makes your recovery far, far more on point? Who knows? Maybe in arm wrestling it could work that way. For all we know, Levan Seganesvili, the greatest arm wrestler of this generation, well, the best of all time, not the greatest, but the best. No one essentially at their peak would be beating him right now. It may be Denis Aplenkov, but that's neither here nor there. Who's to say that if he didn't switch to high intensity, doing his arm wrestling training once a week with his genetics, with his steroid use, that he wouldn't be the same level he is, if not better? And also, he's injured right now. Who's to say that injury wouldn't have happened if he was doing a more safe approach of high intensity, where you're not training or under recovered or overuse injuries? So that's just kind of what I was thinking about today. I don't train like a conventional arm wrestler. I just train once a week. I do it to failure. And obviously it's because I also then do a bunch of bodybuilding shit. So I don't have the recovery that allows me to then go and do all this other shit. Which some arm wrestlers do that. I mean, Levon Shakadisvili does bench presses and squats and shit too, but nowhere as much as he specifies on his arm wrestling training. So, yeah, I wonder where I'll be, and I wonder where other people would be. And I wonder if potentially through my training process, if I was ever to even remotely make a name for myself, which I don't think I will, but you know, I'm very much I'm a confident person in myself, but I limit myself a little bit. So I might be limiting myself a little bit. For all I know, I could actually be a decent arm wrestler. But just based off the fact that I have such small hands, I'm going into it with a grain of salt, and I'm not putting much of my heart and soul into it. And I don't even go and practice with anyone yet. So it's all up in the air for where that will go for me. But who knows? Maybe one day I'll do some amateur competitions and maybe even get into some higher leagues to see what happens. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where high intensity training can get me, because thus far it's gotten me to a pretty good, decent strength level. One of the arguments against high intensity is it doesn't make you strong, which is fucking stupid, because it's demonstrable it makes you strong. In Dorian Yates alone is a perfect example. Like, if you don't think you can get strong in high intensity, go watch Dorian Yates lift weights. That dude was fucking freakishly strong. And Ronnie Coleman himself too. He didn't train high intensity, but he basically did a top set and then like one or two back off sets. Like, he was not super high volume for the most part of his career, and he was basically the strongest bodybuilder that ever lived for the most part, and probably could have been the strongest man that ever lived if he hadn't have taken the bodybuilding route, just because he was such a fucking freak. But okay, that's again going down a different path here. Who's to say that you can't get strong on high intensity? Only retards say that. So the same thing applies in my thought process to arm wrestling. And so far, as I said, I've gotten pretty strong at the fundamentals from high intensity, with small hands too. Even in practice, like, small hands will make it harder to do certain things. You just don't have the leverage to cup in and pronate and all these different things as much as someone with long hands. So, yeah, and I'm only like 2 years into arm wrestling. Who's to say that I can't get elite gym numbers, maybe not on the table, but elite gym numbers just from high intensity training alone. So yeah, that'll be a cool process to see. And hopefully you guys are around in a few years when I'm still doing my high intensity days on arm wrestling. And the same thing applies for the rest of my training too. Like, I'm curious to see how strong I can get on, you know, squats, deadlifts, bench press, even bicep curls, shoulder presses, like just the general strength lifts, maybe not powerlifting lifts, but just generally strength in general. I want to see how strong I can get on high intensity relative to like a powerlifter or something. Obviously, you'll never be as strong as a powerlifter if you don't do specific powerlifting programming, or at least that's what we've been told. But so far, in certain lifts, I'm currently stronger than I've ever been. I mean, not many lifts. I've been far stronger in the past on other lifts, but my overhead press, for one, is at its very best it's ever been. And my strict bicep curl is at the very best it's ever been. At least for my body weight, that's for sure. And that's just through high intensity. So, yeah, if you know, maybe in 3, 4, 5 years, I'll have some, you know, elite level powerlifting numbers. Maybe not my legs, because my leg genetics suck. But for a natural, I might end up having elite level bicep curl, overhead press, bench press, contrary to the popular belief of high intensity doesn't suffice for strength because you don't have enough volume to make neurological adaptations. And even, let's just say be that as it may, you don't get as strong as you could on a volume session program. All that means is that the only difference is in volume. You've got an artificial strength through your central nervous system being more efficient through a bunch of repetitions and frequency. Whereas high intensity provides pure fundamental strength. There is no lie in it. You are just strong. You haven't faked it. I mean, it's not faked it, but you hopefully understand that you're not like, it's not a learnt strength. You haven't developed a skill, or you haven't perfected the technique. Like, the perfect example would be the not the overhead press, the clean and jerk in the Olympics. That is very much strength plus skill. these guys are nowhere as strong as a strong man. They can't overhead press as much as a strong man. They can't deadlift as much as a strong man. And yet a strong man can't combine those two lifts in a clean and jerk because they don't have the technical prowess. So one is far stronger in raw strength. If you strap him in the machine and just simply saw who could output the most power, the strongman would crush the Olympic lifter. But the Olympic lifter has, for lack of a better term, false strength in the sense that his technique carries it so much. Same in powerlifting. Strongmen are pound for pound, or maybe not pound for pound, but just overall raw strength, more strong than a powerlifter. It's just that powerlifters are so sport specific. Same with arm wrestling. A strongman probably has far better grip strength than Devin Lorrat. Like, the bigger hands. Brian Shaw is a freak. He's got the biggest fucking hands on the planet, dude. Maybe not the biggest, but they're huge. And his raw gripping power would be far more than Devin Lorrat's, 100%. And it's been proven so through grip tests, gripometers that show you the numbers. And yet, you apply it to technical prowess and central nervous system efficiency in arm wrestling, where grip is required, but it's a different kind of grip. Devin Lorrat crushes Brian Shaw. So, long-winded rant, essentially high intensity. Maybe it doesn't get you as strong as volume in a sense, but it gives you the raw strength, the honest strength. Anyway, see you guys some more Piss and Vinegar tomorrow. Bye-bye.